Hey, hope you're doing well today. Welcome back to Alfred's Basic Adult Christmas Book, Level 1. This video is Lesson 6. We're going to cover pages 12 and 13 in our book today. Go Tell It on the Mountain. All right, so again, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. I thank you for sticking with me if you've been doing these Christmas lessons out of this book, because I think I made a promise maybe 3 years ago, I don't know anymore, that I was going to finish this book. And every year I get back into these and I claim that I'm going to finish it. This is the year. And then it doesn't happen. So I've been going through these. We're only on lesson 6 and it's been like 3 or 4 years now. So I do apologize. Thank you for sticking with me. As a professional musician, this time of year gets super busy for us. There's just more and more concerts and programs the closer we get to Christmas. And then Christmas is here and you take off time for family. And then you come back to it and Christmas is done and you're just done with Christmas music. At least I am. And it's not that I don't like Christmas music. I love it. It's just, I think for some of us musicians, you play so much of it. And of course, Christmas is a genre. So it's not like music throughout the rest of the year that is just like never ending. There's so many styles, genres. But for Christmas, it's more specific. So you only have so many pieces to choose from. So you're just used to playing the same things again and again. By the time Christmas is done, I'm just ready to move on. So I don't really have it in me to do Christmas lessons when we're in January. And I'm not like the Hallmark Channel where I want to do Christmas in July. So I kind of wait till November when I'm really feeling it and really working it, and then I tend to get so busy. So thanks for sticking with me. We'll see how far we can get, but at least today we've got lesson 6, Go Tell It on the Mountain. So a couple things to note before we start. If you're following along or been following along in the Alfred's Lesson Book Level 1 series, you don't want to start this piece until you finish page 48. As it says here at the top of page 12, use after introducing the dotted quarter note. So you need to be familiar with the dotted quarter note. They are in this piece today. As a review, a dotted quarter note gets 1.5 beats. Now, the thing that sometimes confuses people is the dot is next to the note, to the left or to the right. Not to be confused with a dot above or below the note. That means it's staccato. That's something different. That means play the note short. If it's to the left or to the right, that indicates rhythm, specifically a dotted quarter note. So don't get those two confused. A dotted quarter note's 1.5 beats. So if it's on beat 1, you would count 1 and 2. Now you wouldn't say and, because if you said the and of beat 2, that means you're counting the entire beat 2. But remember, it's 1.5 beats. One full beat, beat 1, 1 and half of beat 2, which is just 2. So 1 and 2. And typically on the and of 2 follows the dotted quarter note with an eighth note. And we will see that today too. So it's very common that a dotted quarter note is followed by an eighth note. 1.5 beats plus half a beat equals 2 beats. So it works out very, very well. The other thing is you'll notice it says combining positions. This piece goes in the middle, starts in the middle C position, and then the left hand will jump to the C position. The middle C position is often very uncomfortable because both our thumbs are on middle C. Sometimes the left hand plays, sometimes the right hand plays. So the middle C position exists mainly because they're taking like a melody that covers a wide range. And it would be hard for the right hand at this level, for a beginner's level, to expect to do it all with one hand while the left hand's playing some other notes. So they divide it between the hands, and that creates this middle C position. So when you get to harder music, you actually won't have that middle C position anymore. It really is mostly for beginners. Now, that being said, you will encounter a lot of opportunities later on where the hands will be playing close to each other. So you do want this middle C position, if nothing else, to at least get more comfortable with the hands being so close together. There are pieces of music that do this, where you've got to play these patterns that are on top of each other. You got to be very comfortable with working the hands together. Now, it's not very common, I will say that, but it happens. And if you ever want to play duets on the same piano with someone else, certainly your hands are going to be very, very close. And so it's not only getting close to your own hands, but it's getting close to someone else's hands. So you got to get comfortable with that. But the middle C position will help with that. The other thing I want to mention is the melody, because it's in the middle C position, goes back and forth between both hands. So I am going to start with just the right hand today. When the melody does this, I don't like that, because when I split the hands, then I'm kind of skipping over the melody. But we'll make it work. So what you do in these situations is you don't look at the words yet. You don't think about the tune. You just think about notes right now, notes and fingering, and then we'll get to rhythm soon after that. So don't really think about the piece yet. We're just really going to break this down. But this will be a good review for notes, rests, counting, fingering, all that really basic stuff that, of course, is at the core and the foundation of every piece of music. So we're going to start with the right hand, like we said, middle C position, which, by the way, the right hand is always here for middle C and C position. It's the left hand that's affected, middle C position and C position. So the right hand actually stays here the entire piece. Now, there is going to be slight shifting of the right hand, but most of it is in the middle C position. So we're going to start with our third finger on E, and I'm not going to focus on rhythms just yet. But I will mention, that we have 2 8th notes coming up, just to be aware of that. We have another E and a D. Then we have a quarter rest, and then we're going to rest the entire next measure. And that is a whole rest. You notice how it's below the line that it's written on. Below the line indicates a whole rest. You're resting for the entire measure, in this case 4 beats. Not to be confused with a half rest, which if you skip over to the end of the top line, at the very end of that measure, that is a half rest in the right hand, in the treble clef. See how it's written above that line. So half is 2 beats. Whole is 4 beats. And the way I also help me remember is a whole, it looks like it's under the line. It looks like a hole in the ground. And the hat, well, I gave it away. The half is written above the line. It looks like a hat. Hat, half, 2 beats. Whole rest, 4 beats. So that's how you can remember. Now, rhythmically, it gets a little tricky in measure 3 here, but we're going to come back and do that later. We got our second finger on D, and we got another D, and we're going to go down to C, back to D, back to C, and the last measure we got E, and back to C. So just notice the skips there, from middle C at the end of the third measure, up to E, and then right back to C. And then we've got our half rest for 2 counts. Going down to measure 5 on the second line, we got E again. So third finger on E, followed by E and D. Then we have a quarter rest on beat 4. Measure 6, we're going to rest for 1, 2 counts for the half rest, and a quarter rest on beat 3. So we're not going to come in until beat 4 with our 4th finger on F. And then measure 7, we got E, E again, and then D, C, D, and we're going to finish the page on middle C for 4 counts. Now when we go to page 13 at the top, it says move the right hand 1 key to the right. So every single note, C, D, E, F, G, with my fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is going to move over 1. And you can see it right there. It says D, E, F, G, A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're shifting the entire hand over. You could call it the D position if you want. So when you start measure 9, you're going to have your second finger on E. You're going to go up to 4 on G. And then G again. This is our first dotted quarter note here. We'll get to the counting later. And then we're going to end measure 9 with 5 on A. Measure 10, we go back to 4 on G. And then we're going to skip down to E with our second finger. Rest on beat 4. Measure 11, thumb on D. D again. Quarter rest on beat 3. D again. And then the last measure, we got E for 3 counts. And then we're going to rest on beat 4. Measure 13, the same note. E. Go up to G, so we're essentially repeating measure 9 and 10. G again, this is a dotted quarter note once again, followed by A. Next measure, back to G, and then down to E. Quarter rest on beat 4, and then 2 Ds in measure 15. And then we're going to rest for 2 counts, and then the last measure, rest for 2 counts. And notice it's D and F. Now, you could stay there, but it says return to middle C position. And I like how they've got you doing that during all those rests. So that just means you're going back down 1 note. All the fingers go back down. So you're going to play that D and F with 2 and 4. And the reason why you need to move there to 2 and 4 is because when you go to measure 17, you're going to have your 3rd finger on E again. And this is just like the beginning. So you got E and D for the 8th notes, quarter rest, measure 18, whole rest, the entire measure. And then measure 19, you got 2 on D, D again, and then thumb on C. And the thumb wouldn't go to C if we hadn't moved back to the C position. You would have run out of fingers. So we're moving ahead of time so that you're comfortably there in measure 19. On beat 3, we get back to D. Beat 4, back to C. And measure 20, up to E, and then back down to C. Rest on beats 3 and 4. We got a half rest. Measure 21. 3rd finger on E, followed by the same 2 8th notes, E and D. Rest on beat 4. In measure 22, we got 3 beats of rest. A half rest for 2, quarter rest for 1. We come in on the F on beat 4. Make sure it's with the 4th finger. And in measure 23, we got E, E, and then D, C, D, and we end the song on C. So you may have noticed measure 17 all the way through the end of the piece is identical, and this is going to be true of both hands, to page 12. So you're really learning page 12 and then the top 2 lines of page 13. That's all the material you're learning, because when you get to measure 17, you're repeating all of page 12. So you actually have less to learn than what you're seeing, which is always kind of a nice feeling once we realize that. The other way to look at it, some people say, oh, when I play 17 through the end of the piece, I'm practicing. I'm getting extra practice in. Yeah, that's a fun way to look at it too, sure. Whatever works, I like it. And like I said, the left hand does the same. So the notes aren't too hard for the right hand. You do have measure 9 at the top of 13 where you got the shift. Now, the cool thing about it is, the challenging thing about it is, it's always hard when you have some jump or shift between lines and between pages. But the cool thing about it is at the end of page 12, you're just sitting on this whole note for 4 counts. So you're not doing much in the right hand. So your left hand is going to be playing, so you will be busy there. But you've got some time to think about that. And you may want to make note at the bottom, well, at the end of the second line on page 12, say, move the right hand. You might want to make note. Anytime you make a note ahead of time, that way you don't feel rushed at the top of 9 or when, measure 9 on page 13. You don't want to go up there and be like, oh, shoot, I forgot, and it's too late, right? Because the music keeps going. You don't have time once you get up there. So you always want to be thinking ahead and maybe writing some information on your page to help remind you to think ahead. Okay, rhythms now. Rhythms. Let's do these rhythms. So we're back to the very beginning. We've got a half note. Now, there's a lot of eighth notes in this piece, so we got to count 1 and 2 and we got to be thorough throughout the piece because there's just that many eighth notes. So we got a half note followed by 2 eighth notes. So that would be 1 and 2 and 3 and then you're off on beat 4 because that's the quarter rest. So again, 1 and 2 and 3 and. The hard thing about it is people like to rush the half note. When you have eighth notes and a half note, the thing that tends to suffer the most are the long notes. We just don't have the patience to count through it. So you got to count through it and you got to break it down to 1 and 2 and, otherwise you risk rushing it. Counting evenly all the way through will prevent any rushed rhythms. So again, 1 and 2 and 3 and actually your left hand will pick up on beat 4. We'll get to that later. Jump to measure 3. Now I mentioned earlier measure 3 has a hard rhythm. This has some syncopation. I'm not sure if at this point in the lesson book syncopation has been mentioned or talked about, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. But I will be just very clear that your eighth note at the beginning of this beat measure is on beat 1, and the quarter note is on the and, because the eighth note's half a beat. But the quarter note, it's and 2. And 2, because it's a full beat. Now this is what syncopation is all about. It's a full beat, but it's not on beat. It's not on the big beat. It's coming halfway in between the beat. It's on the and then it's holding over into beat 2. But that's all I want to say about that. I don't want you to overthink about it if you haven't been introduced to syncopation yet. But listen as I play that. So it's 1 and 2. So obviously the quarter note is twice as long as an eighth note, so make sure that's happening. 1 and 2. And then the and of beat 2 is middle C on the eighth note. So let's put that together. 1 and 2 and. And really just do that over and over again until it becomes memorized. 1 and 2 and then get it faster. 1 and 2 and. 1 and 2 and. So when you stop counting, you just feel and hear that rhythm. And that's where you want to be. You want to get to the point where you don't have to count it. Now beats 3 and 4 are steady quarter notes. But because of all these eighth notes, again, count those quarter notes out. You might rush them if you don't. The quarter notes would be 3 and 4 and on the D and the C. 3 and 4 and. Now when we put the measure together, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So once again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now listen to it without me counting. I'll do that one more time. And then a little faster. Got it? So the counting, you must do it. Otherwise, you risk not playing a very even, smooth piece. And listeners who aren't even musically inclined but know this piece, they'll know that. They'll pick up on that. They'll pick up on that more than a wrong note. It's steadiness, it's rhythm. When someone's playing a piece and the rhythm is all over the place, people are like trying to get into it and they can't. They just can't feel it. Music's something you feel. Rhythm, beats, those are things you feel. You can't explain them sometimes when you're not a musician, but you certainly can feel it. So notes are important, and I think notes get more emphasis than rhythm, and that's what we got to be careful about. Notes and rhythm are equally important. And then on measure 4, we just got 2 quarter notes on beats 1 and 2 and. If I put 3 and 4 together, measures 3 and 4, it'll go like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and then you're off on 3 with the rest. Then when we get down to measure 5, it's the same as measure 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and. Measure 6 is all rests until beat 4. And that's a quarter note, so that's just 4 and then the next measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So beat 3 has the eighth notes, 3 and, but the other beats are quarter notes, so pretty steady. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that's a hard note because that's a lot of counting, that whole note at the end of the line. I'm going to go through both lines now and count both of them for you. So we got 4 beats in a measure. I'll give you a count off. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So yeah, it's not as much fun when the melody gets broken up between the hands. It doesn't even sound like the piece right now. Plus we're going slow. But that's okay. Got to start here. Got to get the basics. Now, remember measure 9, we shift the hand position. So if I'm on middle C here, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and you can almost lift a little early and do that. You can put like a little breath, a little cheat break in there. I'm not saying put in an extra count, but if you lift a little early, that's actually kind of normal in music. Singers take breaths. They put little breaks in, little rest, if you will. You're at the end of a phrase, so it's a perfect time to do it. When I say phrase, you're at the end of a sentence. When you go to measure 9, you're starting a new sentence. So you're here at measure 9, D position, we called it. This measure has our first dotted quarter note on beat 3, the G on beat 3. So that's going to be 3 and 4 and. The A comes in on the and. So 3 and 4 and. 3 and 4 and. Now, I've mentioned this in lots and lots of videos and lessons. When the measure ends with an eighth note on the and of beat 4, practice going into beat 1 of the next measure. Otherwise, you risk that eighth note becoming lazy and holding out for too long. So beat 1 of measure 10, we go right back to the G on beat 1. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start on measure 9, beat 3. 3 and 4 and 1 and. That ensures my eighth note is not too lazy. So 3 and 4 and 1 and. Got it? Now beats 1 and 2 on measure 9 are just quarter notes. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. And then measure 10, beat 2 and 3 is just a half note. 2 and 3 and then we're off on beat 4. So we'll put measures 9 and 10 together. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and we're off on beat 4. Measure 11, quarter notes. On beats 1, 2, rest on 3, quarter note on beat 4. And measure 12 is just a dotted half note. So very easy rhythm in measures 11 and 12. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and then we're off on the rest. Measure 13 and 14 are the same as 9 and 10. So 13 goes like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. On measure 15, we've got quarter notes on beats 1 and 2, and then we're resting on beats 3 and 4. So we got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then the very last measure, we've got half notes on on beat 3 and 4. We've got a half rest on beats 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 and then notice my fingering, I have to change to that middle C position. 3 and 4 and. So be ready for that D and F 2 and 4. During those rests, you want to switch. So starting on measure 15, it would go like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So notice I switched pretty early on. Like we said earlier, measure 17 to the end of the piece is exactly like page 12. So I don't even need to go over it because it's the same rhythms. Everything's the same. All right, so I'm going to go to the left hand now. And I'll focus more on rhythms in the right hand when we put the hands together because the melody, like I said, bounces back and forth. So they work together. The rhythms, kind of work together in both hands. The left hand starts in the middle C position. So that means your thumb is on middle C. So you've got 5 on F, 4 on G, which is one of our first notes, by the way, 4 on G, 3 on A, 2 on B, and thumb on C. So we start with G and C, 1 and 2, and we're going to rest, and I'm going to focus on notes. On beat 4, we've got C down to A, 2 eighth notes, C, A, and the next measure, G, all the way back up to C. And then measure 3, we rest. Measure 4, we rest on beats 1 and 2. We come in with a third finger on A, followed by G. Stay there on that G, because you're going to play it again in measure 5. You're going to play the G and the C, just like at the beginning. You're going to rest on beat 3, and then C, A, and then next measure G. Now you're going to go up to middle C, but unlike measure 2, you're going to rest on beat 4. And during that rest, move the left hand down to the C position, specifically to the C major chord. So you want to practice going from here, landing here. And when you land here, it's got to be solid. You can't do this. All 3 notes need to be as one. So review your C chord to make sure it's a very clean, clear sound. You're going to hold that for 2 counts, and then you're going to the G7 chord. As a review, that's B with the pinky. So the 5th finger stretches down from C to B. 2nd finger's on F, and your thumb is still on the G. So you're here for the C chord. You move here for the G7. And then our last measure, C chord on beat 1, F chord on beat 2. So the F chord is C, F, and the thumb extends up to A. And you may have noticed there's a little staccato right there. So you want to practice being a little sharp with that. And then you're coming back to the C chord. Use the staccato to bounce your fingers back and land on the C chord. So that last measure goes like this. Now because it's staccato and it's short, don't do this. It's still a quarter note. So 1 and 2 and 3. Wait to beat 3 to hit the half note. Don't go too soon. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now at the top of page 13, measure 9 is a rest. A whole rest. Measure 10, you don't come in until beat 4. You got plenty of time to do this. You're going to return to the middle C position with all 5 fingers. And you're going to play middle C on beat 4 of measure 10. So that's that's the only note there. Measure 11, you're going to play that same middle C on beat 3. And the last measure, beat 4. So you just got very little left hand on page 13. On measure 13, second line, nothing. Measure 14, middle C on beat 4. And I'm not going to go into the counting too much with the left hand because, like I said, it works with the right hand. It kind of fills in the spots where the right hand doesn't play. Measure 15, you come in on beat 3, and you go down to A on beat 4, and then the last measure, 16, G with your 4th finger, and hang right there for beats 3 and 4. You can hit G again and B. And of course, when you get to measure 17, all the way to the end, same thing as page 12. One thing I noticed, though, the very last measure of the piece in the left hand, at the bottom of page 13, they did not put the staccato. So I kind of like that staccato. But at the end of the piece, maybe they didn't want to use it because it's the end. I don't know. If you want to put it in, that's fine. I kind of like it. I'll leave it up to you. But if you want, for variety's sake, you can just play it as written, and maybe that was the intention. I'm looking at the duet, and I think I just got my answer. The duet part on page 12. So this is the teacher part, which I will play for you. Actually, we'll do a separate duet video. I've done that with some of these other ones. But I do want to mention that this is kind of answering that question. If you look at the duet part, the second line of the duet part, the last measure there on beat 2, I know there's a lot of notes and all, but beat 2 has a staccato. Now that measure is supposed to be played when you, the student, play the last measure on page 12. So it makes sense that I would staccato when you're staccatoing. You notice the word fine in the duet part? Fine means I'm going to play those 2 lines again. at the very end. I'm going to repeat those. Well, that makes sense because remember we said your part repeats, right? Measure 17 to the end is the same. So they've just condensed the teacher version and just said, they're not going to write it out. They just repeat these. My point is, when we get to the very end of the song, I'm still playing the staccato, right? Because that's what's written there for me. So I'm going to go ahead and say they just forgot to put staccato on beat 2 in your part in measure 24, the very end of the song. So I'm going to, at this point, just consider that that's staccato. Again, that's up to you, but when I look at the duet part and I'll be hitting staccato again, it would make sense that you do too. Now let's go back to the beginning and put the hands together. I'm not going to focus on rhythm just yet. I'm still focused on just getting notes, coordination. So middle C position. Now your thumb is playing on middle C, so you got to get that right hand thumb out of there. You got a half note in both hands, but you want a strong start to this piece. It is forte. You want all 3 notes down at the same time. So work on that evenness. And then we've got the right hand followed by the left hand. So 4/8 notes is what that's all about. It's just split between the hands. And then the next measure is all left hand on the G and the C. Third measure is only the right hand. And we did work on this rhythm already. Come back to rhythm a little bit later. Last measure we got E, C in the right hand, and then the left hand, A, G. So that's 4 quarter notes, just nice even quarter notes. Now measure 5 is the same as the beginning. We got our 4/8 notes. Measure 6 is the left hand. Now beat 3 you've got middle C, and then the right hand on beat 4. And remember, you're going to move your left hand during that. So as soon as you hit that F, come off of middle C, head to the C chord, and on beat 1 of measure 7, be right there so both hands can go down. Take advantage of that rest, absolutely. When you hit that F, you're moving, and then boom, you're right there, beat 1 of measure 7. It's a half note, so you've got 2 quarter notes during the half note. So hold it down. And then when you go to the G7, you're going to the D in the right hand. And then you're going back to the C chord in the last measure. And then you got the F staccato chord, laying back on your C chord. Now, when you go up to page 13, we talked about the right hand moving. We also talked about the left hand moving. Do them both at the same time. You've got all these rests, yes, in measure 9 and 10 to move the left hand. So technically, yes, you can move your left hand whenever you want. But I like when things happen together simultaneously. So this is what I'm talking about. Your right hand's going to go to, we call it the D position. And at beat 4 of measure 10, your left hand's going to be middle C position. Now, this is nice because your thumbs are next to each other. It's not as tight as the middle C position, right? But this is what I'm getting at. If I'm here at the bottom of page 12, excuse me, the end of page 12, go ahead and move both hands at the same time. Because you can coordinate that. We're sort of wired to do that anyways, and I just think it's less work. And the more you can do ahead of time, the better off you are. So instead of having to worry about, okay, here's my right hand, now I got to remember to get my left hand. Yeah, you can do that. But think about this. You're putting in a dotted quarter note, the 8th note, and all of that in measure 9 and 10. Why not go ahead and have the left hand ready to go, and then you don't have to worry about it. You can focus on this rhythm, and then boom, you're right there. So I recommend definitely moving ahead. Move the hands together. And like I said, you can take just, you can lift the hands a little early. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I almost missed it there. But so I kind of moved on the and of beat 4. It's like I put a little 8th rest there. So definitely practice that. So 9, we already talked about the right hand. We've already done that rhythm. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and here's the left hand on beat 4. So the left hand in this line is filling in all the rest that the right hand encounter. Measure 11, it's back to right hand. Beat 3 is left hand, back to right hand on 4, and then 1 and 2 and 3 and again the left hand on beat 4. Go down to measure 13, it's all right hand. Beat 4 of measure 14 is left hand on C. Measure 15, we got D, D in the right hand, and then C, A, G, and then we got our hands together. And remember, it's not this. Yes, it's those notes, but I did not move my right hand to the middle C position. It's this. Here's the cool thing. Look at these notes. Look at the fingering. Same pattern of fingers and notes. Everything spread out evenly. G, skip a note. B, skip a note. D, skip a note. F, look at my fingering. 4, skip a finger. 2, skip a finger. 4. There's so much pattern here. If you're a mathematician or like patterns and things like that, this is like big smiley face right here. Everyone's happy. So I like how that feels. Now I'm not playing it very well. I'm flat fingered and all, but I wanted you to see how that works on the keyboard. So you're here. And if I remember that position, boom, I'm right there. So it's going to help when you move. It's going to help you remember. You can say, let me go to my comfy position right there. If this is comfortable. If it's not, you might just have to find another way. But that's the way I recommend. Now, the way to play it, of course, with curved fingers is like this. But I wanted you to see it on the camera. And like we said, we get to measure 17. It's all the same. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and add the counting in. So at the very beginning, we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And I'm going to pause there. Notice I'm going very slow. So if it feels like you want to rush, don't be tempted, especially where I stopped. The second measure, easy to play those 2 half notes as quarter notes. Don't do it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And learn the piece first, then you can speed it up. Then you can go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And you might say, man, that is a lot to count. I can't. I need a glass of water. I'll show you in just a little bit how you can speed up the counting process without having to count all the ands. On measure 3, let's continue. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And before you notice I move my hands, but before we go on, I want to say now when you do measure 6 and you're practicing hand moves, practice it with the counting now. So when you're first practicing a hand move, take as much time as you need. That's why I never go over rhythms in the very beginning. I want you to focus on notes and movement first. Don't feel the pressure of having to do it in a certain amount of time. Be aware of the rhythms, but don't feel the pressure. You got to work the movement first. Then you work it into time. So in measure 6, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Notice how I move my hand and I'm right there without an interruption in the beat. So now that we're applying rhythms, those are things you want to work on. And if you feel like you're struggling, practice the jump first. Go back and just practice it. Don't worry about rhythm. Make sure you get this memorized. Close your eyes and do it. Try to feel it. When you close your eyes and you can do it, you've learned it so much better. And when you open your eyes, it's going to become so much easier now. So that being said, at the end of page 12, 3 and 4. I almost played on and. I almost played at the top of page 13 early. But I wanted to mention again, you can move a little early. But yeah, don't do what I do. Wait for beat 1. But notice I'm moving both my hands in measure 9, both my hands into position. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So sometimes if we have pedal, we don't have pedal yet though, so I probably shouldn't mention this. But when you have pedal, if I'm holding my pedal down here, I can already move way in advance because the pedal's holding the chord. Spoiler alert, if you haven't worked with pedal before. That's kind of the cool, sneaky tricks with pedaling. That's why I love the piano so much. The pedal, don't tell anyone though, the pedal can help you cheat a little. So I'm going to continue 9, 10, measure 11 at the top of page 13. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now that half note you may have noticed, the G half note on beat 1 in the last measure of the second line, that's when I moved my left hand, my right hand into C position because I had a little extra time there. So right here, I'll move my my right hand. I keep saying left hand, and then I'm right there. That's a good time to do it because you're just sitting on this note. So you may not want to move it during these quarter notes in the measure before, but here's a good time. Got it? And then, like we said, the rest of the piece is the same. Now, before I play it all for you, and I'll have two separate videos. I'm going to have a video that I call performance only. That's where I'm just going to play this up to tempo with all the dynamics, like I would be performing it on stage or for someone. So it may go a little faster than what I do in this lesson. I'll have another video where I do the duet part. I'm going to play the duet part slow, and then I'm going to play it fast in that video. Slow, so you can just get used to playing along with someone, and then fast at the performance speed so that you eventually can play it up to performance as well. So one last thing before I play it one time for you and we finish our lesson is, remember I said we could speed up the counting process a little bit, or at least take away all these ands so we're not going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and be just exhausted. You can eventually just go 1, 2, 3, 4. So the way that works is at that point you're so comfortable with playing the rhythms, the eighth notes and all of it, it becomes memorized. So earlier in the lesson I talked about feel. Measure 3. Doing this so much that you just feel it. You're not even thinking it anymore. Now let me do this with the counting, all the ands and everything. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now let me take out the ands. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's tricky. Even if you know it, that's a little tricky because syncopation. 1, 2, right there. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So I'm playing notes on the ands, which I've taken out, right? So it's a little tricky. Now you don't have to do this. Excuse me, you don't have to do this, but as you're getting the piece faster and faster and faster, and you're just like, man, do I really have to say these ands? You can do this. You can take the ands out, but you got to have the piece pretty much down by feel at that point. Or maybe you're good enough you won't have to count at all, which is even better. But here's the dilemma. I see a lot of people, I see this all the time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I see them do it perfectly. I say, play a little faster. We'll try it without counting. And then this is what happens. Everything just, yes, it's like that. It just falls apart. They got the notes. They whip right through it, and that's the problem. There's no rhythm anymore. So you can't just suddenly go from slow to super fast. You have to work your way up. Right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now just a little faster. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a little faster. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and notice I'm doing the same measure too. I'm not trying to do too much at once. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and but now it's like I'm out of breath. Can I say 1, 2, 3, 4 and still feel it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Yes, I can. Can I do it without counting? Yes, so that's the process. Now, I just sped up a process that may take a week into like 2 minutes or less because, I mean, I've played so long, so many years, I can do that. But when I was a beginner, I couldn't do that. I had to take my time. My point is, don't go too fast too soon. I would rather you play this piece slow and accurate than fast and speedy. You'll get this from every single piano teacher and instructor out there. Slow, 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 slow. Build your foundation. Otherwise, you're going to ruin rhythms and you're going to play it for someone and no one's going to be able to feel it. So, yes, rhythm, counting, all of that stuff. Very tedious, very important. Got to apply it here. That being said, I'm going to go now and play the piece for you. I'll give a count off. And I'm going to play it up to tempo. Maybe not as fast as it could be, but I'll play it pretty quickly so you can hear. Notice it starts forte, mezzo forte at measure 9. And then back to forte at the end of measure 16 all the way to the end. So not a whole lot of dynamic contrast. So here we go. So 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and... There it is. And of course, that's a great tempo. It could be faster, but it can even be slower and still work. Don't feel like you have to get it up to that speed. I will put up 2 more videos, one with me just playing this again, maybe a little bit faster actually, and then another video with the duet part so that you can try that as well. All right, fun piece, fun lesson, lots of information. Definitely a step up in this book from the previous lesson. Maybe 2 steps, a little bit harder. But if you're going along in the Alfred lesson book, this should probably be a lot of review for you in terms of information, rhythms, and things, fingering, and all that should be second nature probably at this point. Just applying different combinations of notes to create this piece. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much, guys. Hopefully, I'll get to lesson 7 here very shortly. Please forgive me if it's not till next year. Don't stop following me because of that. I promise I'll do better. I certainly will keep up the other books like I've been doing, though. I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. Catch you next time.